It was lunchtime, and Vorden was currently out on his own on the park bench, relaxing and wondering what was happening lately, how everything felt a little off with everyone. Logan never really hung out much and skipped classes most of the time. He had that privilege of being a VIP student and would mostly stay in his room, so he understood that. As for the girls, he didn't hang around with them much either, but lately he hadn't even seen Layla, and whenever he did, he noticed that Sia was sticking to her like glue. He hated to admit it, but Vorden was feeling a little lonely. Without Fex and Peter, the only other one he would hang out with was Quinn. Quinn had lately been obsessed with the game like a madman. Every spare second they would have, he would be spending it playing the game, even at night. This left Vorden alone, all on his own. "I wonder what I should do for the summer," Vorden said while looking up at the blue sky. "I'm surprised my family didn't contact me about that whole protecting Quinn situation. Maybe they're waiting for me to go back so that they can tell me off. This is not good for my mental health." "You're telling us," Raon said in his head. "Don't think about going back. In fact, don't even mention it. You're already driving Sil mad. He's covering his ears and rolling back and forth faster than ever. Just stick with whatever the boy's doing. He's an orphan, remember. If he's staying at the school, just stay with him. If you're bored, why don't you look after Sil and let me take over?" Vorden thought about it for a while. He did feel bad for Raon sometimes. The only time he let him out was when he needed him to fight. He tried keeping him out around the others, but no one was to be seen around here anyway. Sil wasn't bothered too much and enjoyed sitting on his own in the dark room. "Fine," Vorden said, and then allowed Raon to sit in the chair and take over. Immediately, Raon got up from the school bench and started to look around. He spotted 3 schoolgirls and walked towards them. While walking, he tapped one of the boy's students on the shoulder. "Earth power, huh? This'll be handy." As he got close to the 3 girls, he spotted his target and lifted his hand. At the same time as he did that, a very small earth stump was made. The girl's foot had collided with it, which caused her to fall. "Ah!" she screamed, but then in the next moment, she felt someone grab her with both hands. "Are you okay there? You nearly fell over," Raon said. When she opened her eyes, she noticed she was being held by a blonde beauty, who wasn't just perfect in the looks department, but also a gentleman. Vorden, watching the whole thing, just shook his head nonstop. The 2 things he likes doing, fighting and hitting on girls. Once the school day was over and Raon had his fun, they switched back and entered the dorm room. They discovered that Quinn was once again nowhere to be seen. Assumingly, he should be busy playing the game. He knew Quinn was trying to get stronger before the vampires attacked, so he didn't want to bother him too much. So instead, Vorden decided he would go and pay a visit to Logan. Perhaps he could shine some more light on what Quinn was thinking. Although Quinn was playing the game for most of the day, right now he wasn't, and it was his current alibi to the others if they knew where he was. He had waited for the sun to set, and when it had, he decided to put on his full costume and mask. Using his shadow cloak, he hid off into the forest by the side, waiting for the boys he had seen the other day. Bullies usually had a set routine and a spot they would pick to do things. Although it didn't matter much in this school, since the teachers didn't do anything in the first place, and Quinn was going to use this to his advantage. If they didn't do anything about the bullies in the first place, then even if he was to fight them, they equally shouldn't care what he did either. If one thing the school was fine about, it was that, or at least, Quinn would hope so. Finally, the sound of the laughing boys from yesterday was heard, and as expected they were coming down the pathway towards the convenience store. The group then quickly took a detour and ventured off the pathway and started to head towards the park, the opposite side to where Quinn was. Quinn was currently hiding in the forest on the convenience store side, since a lot of students walked past it at night, going in and out of the city. On the other side, there was just a giant field that eventually led to the other part of the forest. Still, Quinn didn't need to move. Even from this distance, he could see everything. Then, when the group was at the very edge of the forest, they finally stopped, and the 2 boys no longer kept their arms wrapped around the one in the middle. "I guess it's my time to shine," Quinn said. "Please, why are you doing this to me?" the boy said, with tears flowing through his eyes. "I don't even have enough credits to buy the things I need because you keep taking them from me." "Bill, we're helping you, remember? Paying us stops the really bad guys from getting to you. So now just hand us the money unless you want a repeat of what happened yesterday," one of the boys stated. Bill started to think back about how down he was yesterday. He truly hated his life. Not just at the military school, but even before then, everything felt like hell to him. He was close to giving up. He didn't want to live anymore. That was until the stranger approached him yesterday. The small burst of shouting out and anger he felt when saying he wanted them to disappear was enough to keep him going just a little longer. "No," Bill said. "You hit me if I give you what you want, and you hit me if I don't. At least this way I get to keep the credits." Bill, let's see how quickly you change your mind." The student placed his hand on the floor. The earth from the ground rose and formed a baseball bat in his hand, which was made of solid mud. "Brace yourself," he said, as he went for a swing directly at the student's face. But before it could even reach the student, the bat was smashed to pieces and fell to the floor. As Bill opened his eyes, he could only see the back of the figure, but the two boys in front stepped back a bit and looked like they were looking at a demon. The two white jagged eyes and the demon mask placed over the mouth. "Please inform those higher-ups of yours to come here tomorrow. It will save me the effort of looking for them," Quinn said, although his voice had been altered by the mask and making it sound much deeper and menacing. The student standing by his side out of panic stomped his foot, creating a pillar of his own. It traveled like a bent snake going right for Quinn, but with a single bare-handed fist, he smashed the pillar to pieces. Walking over to the two slowly, he said a few last words. "If you touch this boy again, I will be back." The students, using all their will, fought back from their fear and were about to use their abilities, but without seeing anything, both of them were suddenly sent flying back through the air, going across the fields. They couldn't breathe from the blow, and their lunch that day was already coming out of their mouth. "Level 4 students have been defeated. 40 EXP, 40 EXP, 1040 of 51,200. The EXP still wasn't enough. He looked at the two students far away who were still on the ground. He was having trouble controlling his strength and was going to do a little more. Looking at them, he thought about the other option to gain EXP. If he was to kill them like before, he would get an additional 80 EXP for both of them. However, it was pointless. It wasn't worth the trouble for such a small amount of EXP. Also, there was no need to erase their memories, since everything was a part of Quinn's plan. What Quinn was hoping for was to kill two birds with one stone. First is, helping the people who were continuously bullied in the school. Perhaps he couldn't change the entire world, but he could start by changing the school. The second reason, as these guys said, usually there was a chain of command when it came to these bullies' groups, and he was hoping to gather their attention. As he moved up the ladder, he should face stronger opponents that would eventually give him more EXP. "Thank you," Bill said, but in the next second, the stranger completely disappeared, way too fast for him to hear his words. From this day forward, Quinn continued to do his nighttime vigilante attacks. He would scout out potential targets, and then when night came, he would stop the bullying victims and earn EXP from the side. As expected, his plan was already working well. Stronger and stronger first years were coming to face him, and his EXP was steadily rising in the process. So far, the highest Quinn had faced was a first-year student at level 6. Even while fighting him, Quinn not once had to use any of his blood abilities. He only used his speed, strength, and stamina. With how much his stamina had increased, he could perform the flash step several times, nearly avoiding everything. He was simply too fast and too strong for their abilities to even matter. Eventually, rumors of the night demon who would attack people started to spread around. The effect was even better than he thought. The low-level bullies were too afraid to touch the low levels anymore, in fear that the night demon would come to attack them. What Quinn didn't know was how much this was affecting the whole school, including those at the top. Currently, several second years were inside Duke's office, 10 of them to be exact, one from each classroom. "Report," Duke said. The first person in line didn't say anything, for he was nervous about his answer. 3,000 credits, sir." Suddenly, the calm look on Duke's face had changed. "Did you say 3,000? 3,000? He shouted. "Have you been taking a bigger slice for yourself?" "It's not that," the second-year student replied. "It's this night demon. He's been stopping us from doing our work." "Night demon?" Duke started to look at the student as if he was thick, and slowly walked up towards him. The boy was now shaking in his boots, but luckily the others spoke up before he could do anything. "Sir, before you take it out on him, it's true. We all have similar numbers. This night demon has greatly hampered our collection. All the first years are afraid of him." "All right, so if I get rid of this night demon for you guys, then all will be back to normal, correct?" Duke said as they all nodded in response. "All right, let's unmask and see who the hell this night demon thinks he is, interrupting my business." After 2 weeks of playing the game in his free time and going out acting as a vigilante, Quinn had managed to gain a large amount of EXP, but it was still only around 1/5 of what he needed to level up. Now there were only 2 more weeks left until the planned day of their departure. Still, even if he didn't reach his goal by the deadline, he would go. Being as close as possible to leveling up would also help him, and perhaps there were some unknown beasts he had never faced before there. However, during the lunch period, Quinn had a different place to go to, rather than sticking to his normal routine of going to the VR center. 2 weeks had passed, and this meant that he could now go and collect his specially prepared gauntlets. The excitement could be felt in his footsteps as he went to leave the school and headed on towards the forging area. On his way, Quinn couldn't help but hear the kids talk about something he had an interest in. "Did you hear the night demon struck again yesterday?" a student said. "Yeah, and this time its target was a level 6 student." "Doesn't that mean it has to be one of the level 8s who is behind it, most likely a second year as well?" "Well, that's the thing, right? People are trying to guess his ability, but they have no clue, because he hasn't even used it once during a fight." "But I heard it was super strength." "I heard it was super speed." "Well, it can't be both, can it? The theory is that the armor he's wearing significantly improves his stats, so it might perhaps just be a normal student. They say it's a weak student who used to be bullied, but perhaps came across a treasure at the demon tier armored level." "Is that where the name comes from?" "Well, I think it was based more on his appearance, but more and more people are thinking of this theory. After all, if they were this strong all along, why act now?" Of course, the person the students were talking about was none other than the infamous Night Demon. Quinn was amazed at how quickly it had spread and was pleased with the results. Less bullying was happening around the school, and it was all because of him. When he first found out he had gained so much power, this was what he wanted to accomplish. The problem was that many things kept popping up and getting in his way, and there was always the chance he would meet someone stronger. But right now he felt a little invincible while comparing himself to the students. Finally, Quinn had arrived at the forging house. There were a few times he had come by before, just to check if it was done any earlier, but Alex would always give the same reply, telling him to bugger off and wait the initial 2 weeks. "Can you count?" Alex would say. "Then stop bothering me, or it will only take longer." It was like a little kid who was too excited about receiving his Christmas presents and was asking someone if he could get them earlier. Now, when Quinn arrived at the forger, he would always wait for his reply before entering. There were a few things he noticed. Alex always used the same forging room. The other forgers knew of this as well. Alex wasn't exactly popular with the others. He was known to be quite crazy. Things always had to be done a certain way and always needed to be put in a certain place. There weren't many who were willing to work with him. Based on their first meeting as well, Quinn kind of understood why. A few loud knocks were placed on the door, and Alex told him to come in, as he was already expecting him. The furnace wasn't burning like last time, and on the table, Quinn could see a few items. There were a couple of gauntlets that looked identical to his old pair. The only difference was they weren't all scratched up like the last time he had seen them, and then there were also the dual swords. Rather than just one, though, there were 4 blades kept out on the table. "Are these them?" Quinn asked while looking at the gauntlets, a bit disappointed that they looked the same as his old ones. "No, you dingus," Alex replied. "There was another reason why your gauntlets took longer than the usual time frame. After seeing the weapons you gave me, I wanted to know what made them so special. After melting it down, I was even more struck back, as there was a material mixed in that I had never seen or heard of before. I tried searching on the marketplace for it, but still couldn't find anything like it. I thought you had cheated me, and I was nearly going to sell your advanced crystals on the marketplace to make up for your lies." "You were going to do what?" Quinn shouted. "Calm down," Alex replied. "I didn't, okay? After melting down the swords you gave me, I noticed that they used the same material in them as well. It started to make me think maybe you didn't know about this after all. In the end, I tried searching for a replacement that could come out with something of similar quality, and the only thing that worked finally was glathrium. The reason I did this was that I wanted to replicate the techniques and materials used in the creation of your advanced tier weapon. As you can see, the results were great." Using his inspection skill, Quinn could indeed see that the gauntlets had the same stats like the ones from the shop. This made him believe he had made the right choice in choosing Alex for the job. His gut feeling was right. "Unfortunately, glathrium is extremely expensive, and I only had enough material to create 2 pairs of short swords, a pair of gauntlets, and your advanced tier 1s. So unfortunately, I won't be able to make any more of these until I sell the gauntlets and swords, so the plan might just take a little longer," Alex explained. This was good for Quinn. Right now, he was in no rush to get money in the first place, but was happy that Alex had managed to find a replacement for the unknown material. It was most likely something that was only found on the vampire's planet. However, this might turn out to be for the better. If a vampire was to get a hold of Alex's weapons, perhaps they would be able to see the difference and just claim it as a coincidence. After all, there were slight differences here and there, but the overall shape was similar. "Take one," Alex said. Quinn was surprised by this. When he first met Alex, he thought he was a greedy person, one who would do anything for money, and now he was telling them to take one. Don't look at me like that, Alex said. I'm confident in the work I've put into these. I know once a few of these sell on the marketplace, we can start upping the price as word gets around. You were right. I never wanted to work for one of those crummy families in the first place. Being my boss sounds so much nicer, and you gave me this opportunity. Now pick one before I change my mind. Quinn looked at the weapons. He wasn't going to pick the gauntlet since he would be getting a new pair anyway, so instead, he used his inspection skill on the two pairs of swords to see if there was a difference on either pair. Turned out there was. I'll take these two then, Quinn said. Alex was now looking at Quinn carefully, seeing if he could figure him out or not, and Quinn was wondering if he had done something wrong. Out of the two, only one of them had an active skill, so he decided to go for them, and later he would give the weapons to Borden. During the creation process, Alex could tell only one of these had an active skill. I don't know if you're extremely lucky or you know a thing or two about forging, Alex said, but didn't care to go further. Oh well, I did say you could have one. While forging, even at Alex's level, there wasn't always a guarantee that the final product would have an active skill. The more skillful a forger was and the better the quality of crystals was, the higher chance there was, but still, it was never 100%. This fact made Quinn worry a bit, as he wanted to see his advanced tier gauntlets. Putting the swords away in his dimensional space, Quinn was ready. Alex cleared the table of the other weapons, and then, from underneath his workbench, he had brought out the new advanced gauntlets. Looking at them, one could tell that they were a thing of beauty. I tried to keep to a similar design as your last pair. I used a red dye with the metal to keep the base of the color the same. Around the scale-like patterns, if there's a small silver finish on each end, and finally, as if a volcano ready to erupt, you have blue lines of energy flowing through it, at the fingertips down to the forearm, Alex explained. Those crystals you gave me, I don't know if you got them or someone else did, but it's clear that they knew what they were doing. Each of the crystals came from a beast with a lightning element. At the same time, they all must have had different attributes that allowed them to create the ideal gauntlets. Strong skin, sharp tips. This is a complete way original created by me. This is another reason why I let you have one of the weapons. I want to thank you for how much fun it was to work on such a thing of beauty. Looking at the new gauntlets, Quinn couldn't wait to use his inspection skill. It had to have an active skill from the way Alex was describing things. Leo, wherever you are, thank you for your help, he prayed. Opening his eyes, this was the moment Quinn had been waiting for. Inspect. Advanced tier gauntlets. Name, red voltaic gauntlets. Strength, +10. Defense, +6. Active skill, Thundercoat. Thundercoat is an active skill. When activated, it will charge up the gauntlets using the power of the melted beast crystals. The blue lines on the gauntlets overcharge themselves, releasing a coat of electricity, shocking the user. This skill does not affect the user in any way. Skill cooldown for 30 minutes. The cooldown may be shortened if an additional source of energy or outside source of energy is used to charge the gauntlets. Reading the description, Quinn was over the moon with the results. It was more than he was expecting, and he found it hard to hold his smile in. Alex noticed this as well, and now his suspicions were confirmed. For whatever reason, it seemed like Quinn had an eye for things. He couldn't have been a forger himself, though. Otherwise, why would he need to seek him out? Alex thought. He thought Quinn was a strange character, but he had now started to like him, not only because of the opportunity he had presented, but also because he was the first customer that had truly appreciated his work. Quinn couldn't be upset. First, the gauntlets increased his strength by a whole 10 points. This meant his strength would now be at 50 when being used, putting him up to the next bracket. Then there was the active skill. It wasn't just any active skill, though. It was an elemental one. These were one of the rare types of active skills available. Now, Quinn understood what Alex was talking about, how all the beasts having the same elemental attribute helped him in creating the weapon. Once more, he couldn't help but thank Leo enough for supplying him with the crystals. If he was on his own, it would have nearly been impossible to come up with the money or hunt the beasts to obtain such things. I feel sorry for whoever is going to be your first test subject with these things. I think you're the only first-year student I know with advanced tier gauntlets, Alex said. Quinn wanted to test the equipment straight away. However, there was a problem. If he went out as the Night Demon, he wouldn't be able to use it. They were a dead giveaway that would lead back to him. Eventually, if he used it in the game or at night, then people would be able to relate the things to him, so he would have to save them in his inventory for now. Thank you, Quinn said with his hand held out. In the end, the whole thing hadn't cost him anything, and he could tell this would be a great partnership for the future. For the future, Alex said, shaking his hand back. When lessons were finally over, there was still time for the evening to arrive. Usually, Quinn would use this time to play the VR game, but instead today, he had decided to head back to his dorm room. There, he waited patiently until Vorden had finally returned as well. "Long time no see," Vorden said. "I thought you would be playing that game again today." Yeah, sorry about that," Quinn replied. "You know what's going on. Anyway, forget about that, Vorden. I wanted to give you something to help you out. After all, if it wasn't for you and your family, I would have never been able to fight in that tournament. Here," Quinn said as he put forward both of his hands. Shadows started to form, and when they disappeared, two short swords appeared. The two short swords had the same shape to them. They were quite thick and had a slight curve going to the top. Near the hilt, an arrow design was seen on the base of the sword. However, the two swords were entirely different colors. While one sword was black with the arrow being white, the other was white with the arrow at the base being black. Vorden wasn't going to say no to a gift. He felt like Quinn owed him something ever since he was nearly killed by him on the Red Portal planet. But he wasn't going to bring that up now. He took up the two swords and thought, although they were thick and looked heavy, they were incredibly light. Vorden then performed a few slashes in the air with them. At first, they were slow as if he was testing the weight of the things, but eventually he started to speed up. With each strike, the sound of the wind could be heard, and it was only getting louder and faster until he eventually stopped. "Sorry, I got a little carried away there. It's been a long time since I used weapons," Vorden said. "It also seems like the two different swords are giving me a different boost. The black sword is giving me raw power and strength, while the white sword is giving me speed." "Well, as expected, you're good with everything," Quinn replied. "There's also an active skill, but I'll let you figure that out for yourself. I think they'll come in handy when you don't have an ability on hand. There aren't always going to be people around you, and you're good at close combat, so these look more than perfect for you. I can only see it as a plus that they will make you more versatile." What Quinn said made sense. The only thing Vorden needed now was a trendy belt and sheath around his waist, or maybe one around his back where he could put the weapons in. He hadn't been spending the allowance that his family sent him regularly, and he was surprised it still hadn't stopped. So he should have enough to buy some. "Thanks for this, Quinn. These are great. Though if you can, maybe you should make a bow for Layla at some point," said Vorden. "Don't worry, I plan to. I owe you all for how much you've helped me so far. By the way, how are the others?" Quinn asked. "Others?" Vorden said, looking confused for a second. Then he quickly realized that Quinn was referring to Raon and Syl. He had forgotten that Quinn knew about his secret. "They are troublemakers, but they're doing fine," Vorden replied. The two of them remained in the room and decided to catch up with each other a bit. After all, they hadn't talked to each other for the past 2 weeks. Soon the sun started to set, and finally it was pitch black outside. "All right, I better get going to the VR center again," Quinn said as he lifted his arms and got out of bed. "Quinn, I know you're not going to the VR center," Vorden said. "I know you're the night demon or whatever they call it. Look, I'm not going to tell you to stop. What you're doing has had a positive impact on the entire school, but I just want to warn you. Whatever you do, don't use your shadow powers. I know it's quite obvious as to why, but it's more serious than you think. After we found out about what Duke had done to Peter, I started to look into things a bit more and discovered the school isn't normal. Sure, bullying and discrimination happen at all bases, and even in the outside world, but I've never seen it this extreme before. I already told you this before, but I got in contact with my brother just to confirm it, and when he went to his military school at another base, they didn't turn a blind eye as much as these teachers do. This whole thing with the bullying and the second-year students being involved, it's more like an organized crime ring. If Duke finds out you're interfering with it, then he might come after you." Quinn wasn't ignoring his words, but kept walking towards the door. He then opened it, but before closing it, he spoke. "Good, because that's exactly what I want." After leaving his dorm room, Quinn decided to do the usual. Only this time, he decided to head up to the school roof instead, so he could get a better view of everything that was going on. With the Night Demon's name being known well, there were hardly any cases of public bullying going on during school time. Usually, Quinn would pay attention while in school to choose his next few targets. Instead, the only thing he could do right now was to rely on those that wished to face the Night Demon or hide their actions in secret. His improved eyesight with his level 3 inspection skill was extremely helpful when looking out for things. But there was one thing that was even better than that: his hearing. Before, his hearing was excellent, but all the conversation around him would be heard all at once, and it was hard for him to concentrate. Then he realized something. When he practiced his key control in the morning, he entered a special state. If he entered the current state now and moved the key to focus on his ears, He found it easy to hone in and focus on all the conversations that were going on at once. Ever since the incident at the hospital, not only had his key control gotten better, but also he hadn't suffered from the so-called blood addiction as he had suspected. He still didn't understand what happened that day, but he continued his daily practice. Still, his aura never looked the same, being a mix of white and red, making a soft pink. Some of the two substances hadn't completely combined just yet. Some of the red could be seen swirling around the pink-sized basketball. But because his understanding of ki was so small, he had no clue what it meant. Just when Quinn thought that perhaps there would be no one out tonight, he heard a voice off in the distance. "No, no, what are you doing?" a girl screamed. After locating where the sound was coming from, off in the distance, Quinn could see a boy and two girls. One of the girls was dragging the other along by the hair, while the other boy just continued to watch and laugh while throwing out insults. After choosing his next target, Quinn disappeared. For 1 second, a figure could be seen on the roof, and in the next, he was gone. The girl continued to drag along the other by the hair. It looked like this time they were heading out further than usual. Most of the bullying that happened so far hadn't been too far from the school grounds. Is it because they're afraid of me? Quinn thought as he continued to follow. They had ventured out of the park, past the convenience store. At first, it looked like they were about to head to the main plaza of the city, but they started to take a detour. Finally, they had reached what looked like a construction site. It was an underdeveloped construction building that was yet to be completely built and only had several piles of dirt moved off to the side. So the area was very open. There was a metal fence that had been temporarily built surrounding all of it, but it was easy to move it to get inside. The fence was there just to show that it was a construction zone. Something's not right, Quinn thought. As the three people were walking, they were constantly looking around them, trying to find someone. At first, Quinn thought it was just because they were scared that the night demon could come out at any second, but they were looking far too much as if they were expecting him to come. Not only that, but as soon as they had reached the construction site, Quinn could smell another person there, waiting behind one of the piles of mud. It's a trap. Although Quinn knew it was a trap, this was what he was waiting for. Come on, you slut, the girl student said. Who said a low-level like you could talk to my boyfriend? She continued to pull the student's head, and dramatically, the other one continued to scream. You can stop with the bad acting, a deep voice off from the side said. As all three of them turned around, they could see the night demon. The girl immediately let go, and they all stepped back, slightly shaken. He's real, the boy said. Get out of here. I don't want to mess with you. I'm waiting for the person behind that pile of dirt, Quinn said. Oh, you knew I was here, and you're very confident as well. Out from the pile of dirt, an adult came out and leaned up against the side of it. He had a large black afro on the top of his head and was wearing square-shaped glasses on his face. But the main thing that stood out about him was his uniform. He wasn't wearing the standard uniform like the students. Instead, he was wearing the uniform the teachers wore. On a closer inspection, Quinn could also see on his shoulder his rank. He wasn't just a normal teacher like Dell, but at the sergeant level like Leo. You should know who I am, the man said, but just to remind you, a student should know his place, and it's a grave offense to hurt a sergeant. I'm Dylan White, sergeant under the command of General Duke. There was no need for him to declare who he was. Quinn already knew he was a sergeant from the second year. The reason for saying his name and position was to intimidate him. They knew a student was behind all the attacks, but Quinn wasn't faced one bit. The three students had quickly run off the construction site, fearing that they might get caught up. However, they stayed to watch the fight, hiding behind a few of the metal sheets, peeking through the holes. You're in serious trouble, young man, Dylan said as he placed his hand on the pile of dirt. I was about to say the same thing, Quinn replied. Activating his ability, Dylan was able to make multiple small blocks that looked like bricks shot out from the pile, like a machine gun. If Quinn was able to use his shadow, this would be easy for him to deal with. However, he could not. Instead, he relied on his speed and power, a mixture of flash steps to avoid certain bricks and his fists to block the bricks from hitting his vital parts. Occasionally, a few would hit him, but the damage was minimal. 92 of 95 HP, 90 of 95 HP. If the attack was able to hit him cleanly, then it would have done a lot of damage quickly, but that wasn't the case. The sergeant couldn't believe his eyes. Is his power super speed or maybe teleportation? Dylan thought. As Quinn got closer, it was time for a change of tactic. The pile of dirt had gotten smaller in size, which was perfect for him. Now he was able to control it easier, forming two giant hands slightly taller than a human out of it. The two hands reached to grab Quinn from both sides, and it seemed like there was no chance for him to escape. However, another flash step was performed by Quinn, avoiding the blow completely as the two hands collided with each other, and before Dylan knew it, Quinn was by his side. A fist was thrown out fast and planted right into Dylan's stomach. Although the blow had landed, Dylan had remained in the position he was in. "Ha! That's advanced tier armor under there, boy. Your weak attack with your fist isn't going to hurt me," Dylan said with a smile on his face. "Advanced tier armor, you say? Well, that means I can punch at full strength," Quinn replied, pulling back his other arm. The next second, another fist was planted into him, and the blow felt 3 times heavier than the last. This time his legs were lifted off the ground. The blows didn't stop there as they carried on coming. He was getting hit too fast to even react to it. "Punches aren't the only thing I can do," Quinn shouted, as he delivered a kick to Dylan's face while he was still in the air. The front of his foot hooked onto his head, and Quinn managed to fling him down onto the ground so hard that his body bounced lightly off the solid ground. Coughing out blood from his mouth, Dylan knew he was in trouble. He quickly placed his hand on the floor and shifted himself away from the ground to the other side. "Who the hell is this? How is he so strong? I shouldn't have gone easy. I have to use my soul weapon." But suddenly, Dylan realized he couldn't see Quinn, who was on the other side. "You think I would let you do that?" While still on the ground, surging the energy from his feet, lifting it through his body, Quinn started to perform the hammer strike, only this time downward. A loud crack was heard as the ground beneath him started forming little fissures, and the armor had been broken. It was like a hammer hitting a nail on the ground, and Dylan was no longer conscious. "Congratulations! 10,000 EXP awarded, 22,470 of 51,200. Well, I knew he wouldn't level me up based on no quest being received." The 3 students who had been watching couldn't believe it. They were waiting for the sergeant to get up any second now, but he remained on the floor, unmoving. They knew they were in danger and didn't want to stay there any longer, thus they decided to bolt out of the area. It was easy for Quinn to catch up to them and stop them, but he didn't want to. He wanted Duke to find out about this. He needed someone stronger than a sergeant. As Quinn left the scene by himself, he started to think about the sergeant's strength he had just fought. Sure, he had underestimated him and hadn't used his soul weapon, but Quinn hadn't used his blood or shadow abilities either. He had grown in strength. But what he wanted to do was compare them to the vampires he had met. Based on his experience on knowledge of the system, earlier he would say the sergeants were of the same strength as a vampire noble. Leo, of course, was an anomaly. His power was far greater than a sergeant, but remained at that rank for personal reasons. He would then have to put a general strength at the level of the vampire knights the system had talked about, similar to Fex's sister. Then you had the 8 head generals. Their strength was the same of that of a vampire lord, who was also known as a leader. This would then mean that he would have to place the Vampire King at the level of the Supreme Commander. It was probably because of the power levels around the world being so equal that none of these forces had decided to attack each other. They were just waiting for one or the other to weaken. This, however, was only a theory by Quinn. He had no clue how strong the Vampire Kings or leaders were, and that included the generals, but soon he felt like he would face his toughest challenge yet. It was late at night when Duke had finally received the message about what had happened to one of his sergeants. He was at his desk enjoying a drink, thinking everything was over. But as soon as one of his other sergeants had informed him, he crushed the glass in his hand, shattering it everywhere. "Would you like me to ask one of the other sergeants to try to deal with this, sir?" a man said by his side. No need. I want to deal with this runt personally by myself, and this time, I won't let him live," Duke said. It wasn't long before the entire school found out about the incident. Duke's team had tried to keep it under wraps, but it was impossible to keep something as shocking as this a secret. The people most to blame were the 3 students who had witnessed everything at that time. It was an unbelievable sight to them that they felt the need to share it with everybody. Did the Night Demon really defeat a sergeant? Yeah, and there were no abilities used either. Again, no one still has any clue who it is. Does that mean the rumor about him having demon tier equipment is true? Or maybe he just has an overall enhancing ability? Nothing special, but being a superhuman together. Anyway, that's not the big issue. The problem is now a teacher was involved, and it was one of Duke's men. This might just get serious. The students' hunches were right. Instead of the standard normal lessons that the kids would have all day, they were called out to one of the training fields instead. This included the first year as well as the second year students. The field was mainly used for the second years for combat practice and all other sorts of training, while the first years mostly used an indoor center. The field was extensive and was large enough to hold every single student in school there. All of them were lined up in their homeroom classes on one side, while the sergeants and 2 generals stood opposite them. Now there were only 3 sergeants on either side. Dylan from the second year was taking a break and still recovering, although the truth was Duke didn't want someone who had embraced and failed him standing by his side, and from the first years, they still hadn't filled in Leo's replacement yet. Duke stood forward and was the first one to speak. "You're all here today because of me. At first, I wasn't going to make a big deal about this, but as I'm sure you all already know, something horrible happened to Dylan yesterday." At first, Duke had never planned on doing something like this, but as soon as he heard that all of the students already knew about yesterday's events, he decided to change his plan. "Yesterday, Dylan was investigating a bullying case between some second-year students. While trying to stop it, an unknown person had chosen to interfere. I hear people refer to him as the Night Demon. For some reason, this person chose to attack and gravely injure one of our sergeants." Hearing this, the students started to whisper amongst themselves, especially those in the first year. "But I thought the Night Demon only went after bullies. Yeah, I was saved by him, and he didn't even touch me. He didn't even let me say thank you. The teachers have never tried stopping these bullying acts before. Who is the general trying to fool?" "I hear some of you think of this person as a hero," the Duke continued, "but I assure you he is not. He doesn't care about any of you. He has his agenda in all of this. Why did he only appear now? Where was he before? And now his true colors are being shown as he started to attack innocent people as well. I'm here now to ask the Night Demon to come forward. If you do, then your punishment will be lightened. However, if you do not, you can't blame me for my actions," Duke said. One of the students hearing all this was getting angrier as he heard Duke carry on. This student was Bill, the first student saved by the Night Demon. Although the others didn't know this, he was also the one who spread the name and rumors after noticing that the Night Demon continued to do these vigilante acts. He thought if he continued to spread out the good word, maybe he could help others. Not only that, but the Night Demon had kept his word. One day the bullies after a while had tried to target him again. However, like before, the Night Demon saved him again. Ever since that day, he felt like he had a whole new life. He could start talking to other low levels like him. Without the worry of who was backing them or was behind them, the Night Demon changed his life, and he couldn't stand what lies the Duke was saying about him. He clenched his fist and then did something he never thought he would do. "That's a lie!" Bill shouted out from the silenced crowd. "The Night Demon has only ever attacked those that have done bad. If Dylan got hurt, then I will believe that he deserved it." The other students around started to look at the person who was speaking up, and when they did, they noticed it was a frail little boy who only had a power level of 2. Some of the others who had been saved wanted to speak up but were afraid. "Where is this person getting all his courage from?" they thought. "I understand you saying where was the Night Demon at the start when all of this happened, but then let me ask, where were you?" Bill shouted. "Where were you when all of this bullying continued to happen? Where were you, our teachers, when our credits were stolen from us?" Hearing this, Nathan's eyes opened up a little. He then went over to one of his sergeants standing by his side and whispered in their ear, "I understand you want us to toughen up and experience what it's like in the real world, perhaps making us realize we need the power to survive, hoping to make us stronger, and that may work for some, but not for all of us," Bill shouted as he broke down into tears and fell to his knees. It was clear he was pouring his heart and soul into every word he had said, and many in the crowd could relate. Suddenly the ground underneath Bill's feet lifted about a foot in the air, creating a round platform, and he was quickly shifted to the front and was put directly in front of Duke. "This person has openly supported the Night Demon, an attacker of our staff and possibly a terrorist. They shall be taken to the dungeon for punishment," Duke ordered. Not only Bill, but the others had expected an outcome like this. It was currently a world ruled through power and fear, and this was why they had chosen not to speak up, and this was just another reminder for them of that. "Don't do it," Vorden said, as he could see Quinn, who was standing in front of him, fidgeting and looking around. "Not when everyone's watching." "But this isn't right," Quinn replied. "I never said it was. Unless you're confident you can do something about this and not get caught, then don't." While Quinn was deciding on what to do, it turned out he might not have to get involved anyway. "Wait, Duke," Nathan said. "What that boy said is quite true. My team has been doing some research as well. We have always encouraged fighting and disputes to be handled with their fists, but that and bullying are 2 different things. Ever since the introduction of this Night Demon, Bullying cases have been going down significantly. Not just that, but forcefully taking credits? It's fine for students to wager credits as they fight each other, but looking at this student, I truly believe that wasn't the case. I believe more research needs to go into this before we make such a rash decision. Perhaps it is because of our negligence that someone like the Night Demon felt they had to act out. Duke's fingers started to twitch as he heard Nathan speak. The one thing he didn't want to happen was for Nathan to run an investigation. Luckily, all his misdoings were run through the second years, who were under his authority. Nathan wouldn't touch them. If there was a first-year problem that was related to a second year, it would then be handed to the second year, and Duke could silence the matter, claiming he could do it and that it would be dealt with. The problem was, if he came up with enough evidence such as to allow Paul or Mike to run their separate investigation. That and this are two different things, Duke replied. The Night Demon has attacked a member of my staff. As teachers, we hold up to a higher authority. If we allow them to do this and act out, then what's stopping another one from acting out? As you can see, people are already starting to, Duke said while looking at Bill on the floor. If his credits were stolen, then we can look into it as a single case matter. The main issue here is the Night Demon. I think you're making a bigger deal out of this bullying problem than it is. Kids need to toughen up, and now more than ever, since war is just around the corner. Nathan had to stop himself from smiling. The truth was, he had been looking into Duke for a while now. He knew the day he met him there was something he didn't like about him. However, somehow he was able to get on True Dream's good side, which also allowed him to be closer with Paul than himself. If he was to bring up rumors or small trivial matters, they would just dismiss it. He needed something bigger and more proof. Okay, then let me ask, who here has ever experienced bullying to the point where credits were forcefully taken from them? Nathan said. The students remained silent, and not a single one put their hand up. Duke was inwardly celebrating. You have nothing on me, Nathan. For a second you thought you had me, didn't you? He thought. But then a single student from one of the first years raised their hand. It was another student who had been saved by the Night Demon. Not only that, but they had been touched by what Bill had said. After this, a few more hands were raised, and finally, more and more started to come out. Enough! Duke shouted as he stomped his foot on the ground, causing the whole floor to rumble slightly. The students were tilted slightly off balance for a little bit before regaining their footing. All of you are suspected of working with the Night Demon. You shall each be taken to the dungeon for further questioning. You can't do that, Nathan shouted. Most of these students are first-year students, and they're under my control. Go ahead, Nathan, Duke replied. What are you going to do, force me to stop? No, because you know you can't. Your little blind man is no longer by you to help you in situations like these. Nathan was beginning to curse at himself for not being strong enough. Paul currently wasn't at the base, and Mike was too busy leading the rest of the actual city and army. He didn't have time to care about a few students going to the dungeon. With no one to report to, and not being strong enough to stop him, there was nothing he could do. As he looked down at the grass, a breeze of wind could be felt going past his hair, and suddenly he could see a shadow that wasn't there before on the ground. As he looked up, he could see the one they called the Night Demon. Duke, you wanted me, right? Here I am. Not every student had seen the Night Demon before. For most of them, it was nothing but a myth. However, the countless stories from the students made people think twice before acting. Still, the scene in front of them now made all those doubts disappear as the Night Demon stood right in between Nathan and Duke. When the hell did he leave? Vorden said, shaking his head. Ha, this kid is getting gutsier by the day. I love it, Raon said. We need to do one better. Come on, you, go out as well. We need to one-up him. Slap some kids. Fight the second-year students. Let's start a Royal Rumble. Well, Quinn, this might be a little difficult for you, Logan said. He too had been following the news of the Night Demon. As the creator of the outfit, he knew in an instant that it was Quinn, but he never thought it would be used to this extreme. I know you said you got stronger from the hospital, but strong enough that you can win this without using your powers? Quinn, I can feel that's you out there. I hope you know what you're doing without being foolish. But whatever you choose, if it gets too hard, I'm ready to help you, Layla said with Sia standing closely behind her. Quinn had acted out based on emotion a little bit. When he looked at Bill, it reminded him of Peter. How at the time Peter was taken away to the dungeon, and how he did nothing to stop it. In the end, it had put them in the situation that they were in now. He didn't want another person getting punished for what he had chosen to do. Thus, no matter what he had to come out and fight, he was going to do so anyway, and people were going to find out about it. What difference did it make if it was in front of the school or wasn't? The only problem was, Quinn was seriously disadvantaged. Not a single shadow power was allowed to be used. As the only known shadow user in the whole school, maybe the whole world, he would be found out in seconds. While wearing the mask that covered his mouth and face, he was unable to use any of the charm skills. Phantom Punch and Daze both required the use of eye contact. Still, he wasn't sure if they would be of much use against someone like Duke in the first place. And finally, the blood abilities. The main worry about this was displaying the vampire powers out to the entire world. Quinn still wasn't sure if he could use his status as a vampire leader to help him out, but he knew if he revealed one of their biggest kept secrets, they might never forgive him, and the system seemed to have had the same opinion. New quest has been received. Defeat General Duke to gain an instant level up. The quest had appeared, which meant the system deemed Duke powerful enough to be worthy of an instant level up. This was unlucky for Quinn because it was the same problem he had at the tournament. If he was to defeat Duke here, his evolution process would begin. He wanted to defeat Duke away from the eyes of everyone like with the sergeant. But he couldn't just stand back and do nothing, and even if he couldn't beat Duke completely, that wouldn't stop him from giving him a beating. Inspect. Ability Earth. It looked like his inspection wasn't strong enough to give good details on Duke, which meant that Quinn needed to be careful. Most of the time, the enemy's HP would appear, allowing Quinn to know if he went too far or not. Fighting Duke meant there was a chance he might go too far. The other thing it showed was his ability, but everyone already knew what that was. The Earth's ability was sometimes deemed as weak by others. This was because of how widespread the ability was with the public and within the military itself. But it often made people forget that it was an elemental ability that was just as powerful as the lightning or fire powers the other big four had. There were a few people in the military that would remind people of that, one of them being the Supreme Commander and the other being the Duke. Quickly, sergeants, go over to the students and protect them. Now we won't allow a single one to get hurt, Nathan ordered as he went towards Duke and grabbed Bill right in front of him. I hope you lose, Nathan thought as he took Bill off to the side. Sir, would you like us to join in on this fight? One of the second-year sergeants asked. No, I'm going to crush this runt in front of everyone. Once they see how weak and pathetic he is, it will stop all this nonsense going on. The sergeants moved to the side, and with the others cleared out of the way, there was a nice area for the two of them to fight. The first one to make a move was Duke. However, what he had done was strange. He stomped his foot on the ground, and then in an instant, a ball of earth from the ground wrapped around him. As he was surrounded by the solid ball, others were wondering what he was trying to do, and Quinn had a good idea. Approaching the ball running at his full speed, he managed to cross the area in a few seconds. Is he even faster than before? Layla said. How did he get that strong so quick? When he was close to the ball, an odd movement could be seen on a section of the ball, as if it was alive. Suddenly, a spike appeared, shooting out of it at an amazing speed. Still, what was even more impressive was Quinn, who managed to dodge it. As he took a step back, the spike retracted back into the ball. Nathan, who was standing by the side, knew what Duke was doing. He wanted to shout out and give the Night Demon advice, but he couldn't even if he wanted to. If he did, then it would only make his entire case invalid to go after Duke. They could try to claim the whole thing was set up by him. Taking a step forward, a spike immediately came out from the earth ball again, but Quinn was able to move his head slightly, avoiding it. But that wasn't the only one. More and more started to shoot out from the ball and retract at amazing speed, while Quinn carried on running around it, dodging every attack. Eventually, inching his way closer and closer to the ball, his movements were slight, so no energy was wasted. Who is this Night Demon? Haley said, standing next to Nathan. How could a student be strong enough to match up against a general like this? We don't have a student like this, even in the second year, correct? I don't know, Nathan said. At first I thought it might have been one of the sergeants, but everyone here is accounted for, and I see no reason to have the soldiers outside of the school get involved in this. What's even stranger is they're trying their best to hide their ability no matter what. It's clear it's a student that doesn't want to get caught. I understand what you're saying, but look, Faye interrupted. I think you missed something. Look at his hands, and look at his feet. Other than that thin overall black suit he's wearing, nothing is covering them, and those are just the standard boots. He hardly has any beast gear on at all. So how is he so fast? And he might have the power to back it up as well. Maybe the rumors of him finding a demon tier chest piece or level of equipment are true after all, Nathan replied. Finally, Quinn had managed to reach close enough to the ball to get a punch in. Using all the strength he had, he whacked the ball. A few cracks were made where he had punched, and a small dent appeared, but there was no significant damage. The spikes continued to come out at him, but this time he decided to use his strength to hit the spikes on the side before they could reach him, breaking them apart and causing them to fall to the floor. The spikes were being made from the earth coming from the solid ball, so now the thickness and strength of the ball were growing weaker. After breaking off a few of the spikes, Quinn punched again and again, causing the dent to get larger and cave inwards even more. "You were right," Nathan said. "He does have power. I've never seen anyone being able to break the ball before." Finally, noticing that he had significantly weakened a part of the ball, Quinn lifted his leg above his head and swept it down as fast as he could, hitting a section of the ball with the heel of his foot. The concave area had broken, and slowly cracks started appearing throughout the whole ball until finally the whole thing had crumbled. Still, something had caused Quinn to jump back, and this something worried him. Now Quinn finally understood what Duke was doing under the ball all this time. He was activating his soul weapon.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.